when we must face realistically the startling fact that since 1958, crime in this country has increased 5 times faster than our population growth.
Welcome to Bite-Sized Bios. This is meant to be a mini-sode that will accompany HDTH. Every week, I will pick a person from history and dive into their lives. All right, welcome back to another episode of Bite-Sized Bios. I'm your host, Richard Dix. This is episode number 38 here. Welcome. If this is your first time listening and tuning in, welcome. If this is not your first time, welcome back. Always appreciate the people that come back and press play from week to week. This week we are talking about J. Edgar Hoover, who was, of course, the one of the famous directors of the FBI throughout the years. But, of course, before we get there, because this is the mini-sode accompaniment of HDTH, we have to go back into time and talk about the previous episode from last week, which, of course, was the MK Ultra and other government-funded human-based experiments. And what I want to say, first off, because I realize it from going back and looking, because I'm always just checking and adding stuff to the website. The woman who I mentioned, what's her name, Val? The woman, she did not have a buzz cut, for the record. If you looked, and you're like, what is he thinking? What is Richard thinking? That's not a buzz cut. You're right. I went back. I was like, it's not. But in my head, when I saw it, when you remember it in your mind's eye, she had a buzz cut. It worked better. But I can be honest and say that she didn't. We can also be honest and say that her hair wasn't much better, but it was not buzzed. And her eyeshadow was probably more of like a light purple, really, than a pink. I'm just trying to do you right, Val. I hope you're good wherever you are, because like I said, they messed her up. If you haven't checked out last week's episode, you might want to. I would say, if you're into that kind of stuff, just about like this, the Val Orlico went through it. They hit that woman with 14 tabs or injections of LSD for just weeks and months on end. Man. You really fell for it, and I used a lot of her audio because I honestly, her stuff was to me the most chilling, because first off, she doesn't look the way she sounds. So if you haven't, go check out our Val. We love you, Val. But it's just when she's talking about like her bones melting at the beginning of the episode, it sounds like a movie or something out of a Pink Floyd song or something, but it's real life. It really happened. It really was government funded experiment on people without their knowledge. It was really sad. And like when the other woman was saying that she went home and then they called her and said, if you don't come back, we're going to call the cops on you. Like, this is supposed to be medicine. That's why I said that the Allen Institute ones were some of the saddest tests in my experience, because I feel like I broke it down a little bit in the episode. We'll kind of rehash it here. In Edgewood, the soldiers knew they were signing up for an experiment. They signed up and they volunteered. They went to an entirely different base. Like, they knew what was going on. They didn't know what was going to be tested, but they knew what was going on. And then like we talked about Operation Midnight Climax. Those guys, they didn't know what was going on, and that's bad, but that's really it, right? But then you go to the Allen Institute, and these people have no idea what's going on. And on top of that, they're coming there seeking help. They're coming there looking for guidance in certain mental capacities that are off in them, or like literally like physical ailments that have gone awry now. You know what I mean? And because of that, because they're there, literally because they're there, and the government just feels they have this control, or at least, I don't know what else you could call it, because they do. They did. They still do, I guess. To just do at will whatever they wish, whatever they feel in the moment. Which, as we said, happened even with our dear friend, rest in peace, Harold Blower, who died with the New York Psychiatric Institute. Yeah, they didn't even know what they were putting in him. They didn't even know. It's wild. Check that episode out, man. I definitely did a super duper deep dive on that, and by the end of it, I'm not gonna lie, I watched hours and hours of stuff about the CIA, and I honestly, at the end, I got tired of it. I was like, I've been doing this for weeks. Let's just do the episode. But I think there's definitely more to talk about. I'm thinking about doing a CIA episode just by itself, just on the history of the CIA, and so because there's so much other stuff. We only because it's out once we get outside of this 40s to 70s series, there's so much other stuff the CIA has done in the last 40 to 50 years that we didn't cover because we're only stopping at the 70s. And I want to cover the FBI because we're going to talk about J. Edgar Hoover here, but I mean, the FBI itself deserves its own episode, so there's a lot more to talk about. But I don't know if there's much else to say here. Like I said before, I'm really enjoying the 40s and 70s series. We do have the Instagram is up and running a little bit more. Now I started to put some stuff up there. The Twitter's going now. Started to follow a couple more people. Definitely looking for guests out there. If you're listening to the podcast, you think you have something interesting to kind of bring and add to the show, hit me up and let me know. We can definitely talk about it. Yeah, httappa.com for all the extras, the works site and everything. Like I said, go check this out. What we're going to talk about here is J. Edgar, but there's definitely some good stuff on their videos to watch. But yeah, give us 5 stars wherever you find this. If you like it, if you don't like it, give us 2 stars. Tell us why you didn't like it, because constructive criticism is always welcome. Let's see, before I start to ramble, without further ado, as we know what to do, here is the episode.
Justice has nothing to do with expediency. It has nothing to do with temporary standards. It cannot and will not permit the FBI to be used to superimpose the aims of those who would sacrifice the very foundations on which our government rests.
All right, so we are here today to talk about J. Edgar Hoover. John Edgar Hoover. He was born on January 1st, 1895, to Anna Marie and Dickerson Naylor Hoover. This was in Washington, D.C. Hoover would live his entire life in Washington, D.C. His father was the chief of the printing division of the U.S. Coast and Geodetic Survey Commission, organization, something like that. It kind of just trailed out. I thought there was going to be more to that. Dickerson Hoover was of English and German ancestry. Hoover's great uncle John Hitz was a Swiss honorary consul general to the United States. So this guy's got a little bit of cachet behind him. He and his mother were really close. Some could argue too close. And I don't mean that like in a weird way. It's just, I don't know. He and his mom were really close. He would end up living with his mom until his early 40s, like in just he and his mom, because his dad would die. Well, I think we'll get to that. If we're not, I'll try to get it in there. But yeah, Hoover was born in a house on the present site of Capitol Hill United Methodist Church, which is located on Seward, I think that's how you pronounce it, in Square near Eastern Market in Washington's Capitol Hill neighborhood. Stained glass window in the church is actually dedicated to him. When Hoover was born, he wasn't actually given a birth certificate, which I guess is a little odd, even though it was like required during that time in Washington, D.C., and his other siblings had birth certificates. Not really sure what's going on with that. He wouldn't actually get a birth certificate on file until 1938 when he was 43, also the year he moved out of his mother's house. Interesting. A lot of big things happening for him during that time. Like I said, he lived his entire life in Washington, D.C. He attended Central High School, where he sang in the school choir. He participated in the Reserve Officer Training Corps, and he competed on the debate team. He was said to have done this because he was a big stutterer. He was a hard time getting words out, and so his answer to that, the way he thought he would fix that, is to join the debate team. Which to me, because I used to stutter pretty bad. That was never my thought. Like, oh, let me do something where I talk more. I don't know. But yeah, so that's why they said he actually joined the debate team. But he would end up, and that actually, it did help him because he ended up not having a stutter anymore. But after high school, he accepted a entry-level position job at the Library of Congress, which was about a half mile from his house. He would work there for a while. He would get a Bachelor of Law from the George Washington University Law School in 1916. He would continue to work at the Library of Congress while he was doing that. He would be a member of the Alpha Nu chapter of the Kappa Alpha Order, and he got an LLM from the same place in 1917, which is I believe it's a law of legal management, something like that. And so right after he got his LLM, Hoover was hired by the Justice Department to work in the War Emergency Division, and he accepted this job in 1917 at the age of 22. The job paid $990 a year, which equates to about $22,000 in today's time. This is really important because this is right around the time that the first war is starting. Not the first war, but the first World War I is starting. And so he was going to go, I guess to fight, but he ended up accepting this job instead. Some people think he was doing it to avoid the war, but there were actually, I think he was really actually needed to support his family because the same year that he got this job, I'm not sure if the actual dates, how they match up, but his dad would actually lose his job at the U.S. Coastal, Survey Club or whatever he was doing, and because he suffered from mental illness for a while. He was always depressed. His father was, and I guess eventually it just got too much, and the people at his job were forcing him out of his job. He ended up not getting a pension, so J. Edgar was forced to have to fend for him, support his family at basically 22. And so he soon became the head of the division's Alien Enemy Bureau, authorized by President Woodrow Wilson at the beginning of World War I to arrest and jail allegedly disloyal foreigners without trial. He received additional authority from the 1917 Espionage Act, and out of a list of 1,400 suspicious Germans living in the U.S., the Bureau arrested 98 and designated 1,172 as arrestable, quote-unquote arrestable. That's wild. I mean, what exactly makes someone arrestable? You know what I mean? Like, if you committed a crime, then you should be under arrest. Does that make you arrestable? Are you then arrestable? I've never really thought. That's such an odd. It's like, yeah, well, we're gonna get these 98, but these other 1,100,000 can get it, or whatever. Like, what? All right. So, in 1921, Hoover rose up in the Bureau of Investigations to deputy head, and in 1924, the Attorney General made him the acting director. He was appointed again, I guess, by President Calvin Coolidge as the fifth director of the Bureau of Investigations. They haven't quite yet got the federal part on there. That's going to come in about 15 to 20 years. When Hoover took over the Bureau of Investigations, it had approximately 650 employees, including 441 special agents. And it's important to note, I guess, I'm not quite sure. I think it's around this time, or we're getting into the point where the shift it's where they become more of the federal, I guess, what they're trying to actually police. It starts with just kind of just being the national police force, and they kind of get into this entire document keeping, spying, it really does. Once J. Edgar kind of gets in the helm of running the Bureau of Investigation, which then becomes the Federal Bureau of Investigation, he really does get kind of locked into this idea of keeping track of people. He's really big on keeping files. He said he had so many files on so many different people. He literally had a file on the person that we just did the last BSB on, the First Lady, Eleanor Roosevelt. He had a file on her because she was too liberal, right? It's wild. This all coming from a man who is probably a closet homosexual, which is fine. You know what I mean? But it's like, but why be all up in other people's stuff if you got whatever you got going on? You know what I mean? But so he kept files on everybody, and it really started when he first kind of got with the Bureau of Investigation, because he was working on, I believe they call it what do they call it? It was like the League of Radicals or something, some crazy, sound like a movie, some sort of thing. And it was about similar to what it was called. I think it was different than what I just named, because I saw it in a documentary and they definitely specifically used the term radical. But it was about watching all of these people that were from other parts of the world who were living in America and trying to figure out if they're here for some subversive stuff, to figure out if they're here to, somehow try to overthrow America, I guess, or something. It was like their whole idea. And so as we get into the 30s, one of his problems becomes American organized crime, if you will, the mafia, La Cosa Nostra. During the 30s, J. Edgar persistently denied the existence of organized crime, despite everybody seeing it with their faces, and them murdering people all over everywhere. He was just like, nah, that's just a rumor, you know what I mean? But and it was said that they think that the mafia had something on him as far as blackmail, because like I said, he was considered to be straight, but he was never married, and he was always with this guy who worked for the FBI. I forget, let me get his name, but they would always wear matching clothes sometimes, and they're all like, nah, but they're not gay. It's like, okay, I mean, maybe, but I don't know. But what got me, and once again, there's nothing wrong with being gay. It's just own who you are. You know what I mean? But basically, when I found out that they signed their Christmas cards together, I was like, oh, that's it. That's it. I mean, I can't think of one friend of mine that I would ever like a real actual like platonic like guy friend that I would ever just sign to get like and Richard and so like what? No, it just so to me it's undeniable. But there's so many like the question mark of like was he not? The same thing with Eleanor Roosevelt. In the last episode, it's like these people, and I understand it's a different time. It's like these people just like even in retrospect, let's just be honest. You know what I mean? Let's just be honest that at the very least, these people were bisexual. But I don't know. Oh yeah, I'm still trying to get this guy's name. Hold on, I'm sorry. I'm going off on my soapbox. I will get his name real fast. Clyde Tolson. That's his name. Yeah. So just wanted to put his name in there just because we're talking about, I guess, his boo thing. We don't want to leave him out. Like I said, many writers believed Hoover's denial of the mafia's existence and his failure to use the full force of the FBI to investigate it were due to the mafia gangsters Meyer Lansky and Frank Costello's possession of embarrassing photographs of Hoover in the company of his protege, Clyde Tolson, like we just mentioned. I think that has to be true. I think that has to be true because why would you go on, especially if you're so after crime. You're the big crime guy. You're the G-man. You know what I mean? You are literally the G-man. And you don't want to get after these guys? Oh, because they got pics of you and Clyde doing God knows what. They said he was into cross-dressing is what they said, which once again also cool, but like I don't know, like it's the hiding for me that it's the hiding. It's the, like I said, it's once again the fact that you're so in other people's business, but your pool is a little murky. But yeah, I mean there's so much that we can get into about J. Edgar, and because I really watched a lot of documentaries. I mean, you could definitely talk about the COINTELPRO, and the fact of him, basically bugging everything that was around MLK Jr. for a couple years. I mean, multiple hotels and houses, and there are some really good documentaries you should check out that will be on the work site. I mean, literally, I would recommend this one specifically, and I'll make sure it's on there. Because what they did was they bugged like all his hotels and everything, and they bugged this home I think that he was renting, and they found out through listening to the phone calls he was gonna go try to get with his girl, because it was true, like MLK was like very promiscuous. He was not faithful to Coretta, but that's just what it was. And so this was one of those rendezvous. And so he leaves, the place and goes to the girl's house. What the FBI does, because they've been watching this entire time, is they call in a fake fire, call. They're like, oh, that house specifically that he goes to is on fire. They have the footage of Dr. King leaving that house and getting in his car and driving away. Like, it's remarkable. You know what I mean? It's something that if you like history, it's pretty interesting. But yeah, so J. Edgar would go on to serve. He would serve in the FBI for 48 years, almost 50 years. And he would die as the director of the FBI on May the 2nd of 1972. And I've mentioned before in the previous podcast, we talked about his death in Watergate, which I believe, like I said, is episode 73. This is I think a market change in how the world viewed the government right around the time that he died. Literally, I think right before he died is when they had, I forget what the name of it, that civilian-led commission that broke into an FBI agency in like 1971 in Pennsylvania and found all these records and realized just how messed up the FBI is, just like all these other government agencies. So I just feel like after that time is when people started to open their eyes, because after that time we get the Warren Commission, not the Warren Commission, excuse me, the Rockefeller Commission, because the Warren Commission was in the 60s. The Rockefeller Commission that ended up telling everybody about all the stuff that happens with the CIA, and people just really started to realize that things aren't as sweet as they thought they were in the 60s. It's really a change of the guard, if you will. But yeah, Hoover dies in May 2nd, 1972 of a heart attack in his Washington home. Once he passed the directorship on his boy, Clyde Tolson. But right after that, Nixon appointed L. Patrick Gray, which that of course is the entire Watergate thing. But Hoover's body lay in state in the Rotunda in U.S. Capitol, where Chief Justice Warren Burger eulogized him. Up to that time, Hoover was the only civil servant to have lain in state, according to the New York Daily News. President Nixon delivered another eulogy at the funeral service in the National Presbyterian Church and called Hoover, quote, one of the giants, whose long life brimmed over with magnificent achievement and dedicated service to this country, which he loved so well. And there have been people that I've said that I saw as watch documentaries that said we should thank Hoover for building the FBI. And I think, obviously people like him it's hard to call them nuanced. It's hard to say he's a nuanced individual because he just seems he just seems like somebody who doesn't like people, or truly he just seems like he doesn't like himself, and so he projects that. Like I said, why would you be so in other people's stuff, knowing that your stuff's not really, you ain't got your stuff together? But yeah, so I mean, I guess you can be thankful that he built the FBI, because I do think that we need it. I do think as America, we need, or any country needs a sort of entity like the FBI. But it's I guess what is it? You can't You can't crack a few eggs without, break a few something. You guys know what I mean. All about the eggs. Hoover was buried in the Congressional Cemetery in Washington, D.C., next to the graves of his parents and a sister who had died in infancy. All right, that was John Edgar Hoover. A very multifaceted man, to say the least. Nuanced, doesn't even begin to describe this gentleman. Learned a lot about him. I would say maybe I knew maybe half of it, because I loved that movie that Leonardo did. I think honestly he deserved an Oscar for that. He didn't have to wait to get eaten by that bear. He could have just gotten it for that, and a bunch of other movies, but that's a whole different discussion for a different day. But yeah, J. Edgar, man. Definitely, and his boy Clyde Tolson. He did so much. I do think we have to be thankful for him, because I think even though, because it's like saying you're not thankful, and I'm speaking for myself as an American, you're not thankful that to be an American. It's like it took a lot that I was never here for, that was really, really messed up, but we probably wouldn't be here if we weren't here. And it's like we probably wouldn't have the FBI the way it is if he didn't do the stuff. All the stuff that he did. I don't know. But yeah, I mean, definitely a good guy. We've got a bunch more coming down the pike, man. Honestly, I think we might have more bite-sized bios than we do have episodes. I've got pretty much the rest of the 40s and 70s series laid out. I'm going to be honest. I think we have about maybe 2 more months of stuff to get through before it's, then we're going to move on to the next, I think, series kind of works. But I do have some palate cleansers coming down as well. Some stuff that's just not this, you know what I mean? To kind of go back to the roots and bones of what this pod kind of used to be, I think, last year. But I like where we're going. I really do. I like what we're doing here. It's I don't know. It's growing. That's what I like the podcast. It's what I like about the podcast. It's always going to grow. But yeah, hope you guys liked it. We're going to see you next week. Give us 5 stars wherever you find this. Also, I don't know if you've noticed, the Spotify episodes are back up. All of them are up there. Before it was only like episode 63. They're missing like 40 episodes. I had to talk with Spotify, got it all fixed, got it melted, or got it all laid out. Everything posts. If you're more of an Android person, it's up there for you. I'm going to try to post more Android links as well. I'm an Apple person. Everything I have is, I have the iPads and iPhones, and I'm recording this on a Mac Mini, but that's just the way I think. But I'm trying to be more accommodating to those out there who are not. So Spotify is there and ready to roll. Like I said, 5 stars wherever you find this. 2 stars if you didn't like it. Tell us why you didn't like it, because constructive criticism is always welcome. As always, thank you guys for coming back week to week and press and play. See you next week with the next HDTH.